So it is the 20th of December, 2024, and we are recording. I think this will be the last recording of the year. Do we have one more, Steve,
No,
or
we have Tamara. Last posting. Depending
last
on when we
posting?
post the one with Tamara for our annual year wrap up and predictions for next year, where we talk about what we got wrong the year before, but that doesn't stop us from trying in the upcoming year to make predictions.
It doesn't. And so on the same track as we've tried the last few weeks, we're going to try and stay away from the doom and gloom and just try and provide some kind of New Year's resolution style practice tips for what can you do to keep it together while practicing immigration law in this slightly bizarre era.
We're staying away from the doom and gloom. My practice tips all involve the doom and gloom.
Okay, all right, all right, all right. You can do the first one.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, and this ties in. So, in the last episode that we published with Ryan Rosenberg, he talked about how one of the things that's working really well in Canada's immigration system are port of entry applications. So, of course, in the past week, as part of a response to the Trump tariff Truth Social tweet threat, whatever posts to Truth Social are called, truths, um, the uh, the government has ended flagpoling, pretty much effective immediately. Flagpoling was a way of applying for a work permit at a port of entry. It actually is like a very weird facet of Canada's immigration system, which was the process to apply for a work permit at the border was someone would go to the border. We talked about this. We've done episodes on flag bowling, but for those who don't know, the process to apply for a work permit in person was you go to the border, the Canada-US land border, go to the border of one of the countries that the United States that is pretty, I don't want to say paranoid, but careful about their border. You walk up to it, the border officer says, "Why are you coming to the States?" The applicant goes, "Well, actually, I'm not. I'm just here showing up because I have to come here in order to turn around and go to the Canadian side to apply for my permit. They make me say hello to you guys first." The United States hates it because obviously it was not a very effective use of their resources. That's gone. But they didn't just end the whole going to the United States part. They've said there will be no more in-person applications at the border. The There was musing about creating places to apply in person, but all the press releases just say applicants have to apply online. And so my first, tip for people who are in practice, who are preparing work permit applications, whether it's representative or applicant, is to really, start preparing for a world of online applications. It's kind of like the COVID era. And as part of preparing for a world in online applications, it's preparing, first of all, I think it involves reading a lot more federal court jurisprudence, which we'll probably cover on the podcast about language requirements, where at the border, they can tell pretty much right away if someone can speak English and perform the role. That doesn't exist. Interviews don't exist anymore. There's strict federal court jurisprudence about checklist requirements, meeting the terms of the checklist when procedural fairness requires a request from IRCC versus they can just refuse right away. So the big tip will be, for everyone who has been practicing with a heavy port of entry work permit application practice, is that that's coming to an end. I still maintain my prediction that all port of entry work permit applications will end in 2025, as I don't see how they can have a cap on work permits if there are people applying in person. But even if they don't, flag polling is gone and people need to adjust and start learning before their first application, how the online work permit world works.
So they haven't ended all port of entry applications at this point, just flag polling specifically, right?
At this point, it's just flag polling. Every
Which is,
time,
as I understand, defined as like coming back, not just going straight around the flagpole, as we call it, but rather coming back with having spent less than 24 hours outside of the country. Am I
yeah, I
right?
can't remember if it's 24 or 48, and I think right now it's the ending of flag polling is limited to the land border. People are still doing what's called air polling. You're right, 24 hours. But I think there's always a bit of confusion whenever these changes are brought in. where initial work permit applicants were being told that that was ended as well. The big change actually was in the Gazette this week. They've basically just given the Canada Border Services Agency to determine which classes of people will receive which services at which ports of entry.
Yeah,
So I think that it's all gearing up to say no more like port of entry work permit applications.
yeah, I
Um,
agree.
but yeah,
Yeah, I'm real confused about how they can say no flagpoling because this is not something that the regulations specifically prohibit. I know that they say you must enter Canada, which suggests you must actually be outside of Canada. And so that's how they've tried to do it in the past.
so
But
the
if you,
way the new regs stipulate it is that they're able to deny service to a class of people. And they are saying the
I
class
see.
of people are the people who have been outside of Canada for less than 24 hours.
Okay.
I don't know how they were doing it before. It was always weird to me that like CBSA could just say nope, even though the regulations allowed it,
I think that
or
they
it
were
didn't
using
allow it.
that like you haven't entered because you haven't actually left.
Yeah, but like designating it at certain times, for example, it was never
Yeah,
clear to me what the
exactly. I don't
legislative
know.
authority for that was. But anyway, now they have the legislative authority to do pretty much
Okay.
what they want.
Haven't looked into it at all. Okay, no, it's a good one. We're definitely gonna see some learning that needs to be done there. So mine is a more generic one, which is that I think that everybody, I mean, immigration has always been kind of specialized in the sense that like even within the immigration practice, people have their sort of subspecialties. And I feel like that is going to continue to evolve. I can go on practicing and have no idea about how to do work permits. I will have my own very specific practice that does this thing, and you can have your own where you don't. There are very few immigration generalists left, and I think that that's going to continue to be the case, and perhaps even more so than it is now. What's helped me manage my sanity is to just continue to specify what my brand is, what is the kind of service proposition and what is so that I'm not trying to stay on top of the minutia of every single area of change because it doesn't feel feasible as it is right now. But rather I have specific curiosities and certain things that I do regularly. So I have an interest in, like parliamentary process, like things, and I'm feeling comfortable with certain areas, and I don't try to generalize. The consequences of any misstep in any area is just so incredibly severe for the applicants right now that you need to feel truly confident in what you're doing, and that when a change comes, you can advise and feel like very comfortable and well grounded in the area that you're practicing in. And so like that specificity is not something to shy away from in my view, but something to embrace and cultivate like um, a strong brand around what that is.
I think that's right. I mean, it might help if you kind of define what your specificity is, because um, like I don't know if I would I define like, so your practice area, and actually you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically refusals, enforcement, refugees, complex H&C. Is that sort of,
Sort of, but like I don't have an interest in like fighting the big security cases, for example. I'm sort of like, for me, I really like the front line. I'm not somebody who's looking to go to the Federal Court of Appeal, to the Supreme Court of Canada. Like I'm very much interested in the frontline decision-making process. That's what I've
yeah,
realized is the part that's most interesting to me. I'm interested in like I want to read the Supreme Court of Canada like jurisprudence, and I'm interested in seeing certain cases go up, but I'm very happy for that not to be my practice area. I'm much more interested not in the law as
yeah.
law, but in the actual like practical realities of how this is in fact affecting this person, and seeing so it's more I've kind of honed it down to what is really of interest to me, those specific types of
I think
decisions.
that's definitely key is being honed down. Whether, like how specific that is. Like I would say like you're not just doing IRB appeals or just doing federal court.
No.
Like
No, no,
there's a balance I think that needs to be held in terms of like, as you said, trying to do everything and you can't do anything
no.
versus being
Like
too specific. Like
for sure.
people who are doing just IAD spousal sponsorship appeals decimated during
Too
COVID.
specific. Yeah,
People who
yeah,
are
yeah.
just doing refugee claims decimated during the Harper cuts.
Yeah.
People who just do study permits for Indian students hurting right now.
Totally. Like
So
I
there's
do
there's
all divisions of the board. I do spousal appeals. I do like residency obligation appeals. I do all litigation before all divisions of the board with a bias mostly toward the RPD. I do lots of litigation in front of the federal
yeah.
court, but again, I'm more attracted to certain types of cases. And this actually dovetails. I'm going to do my second one
But would
because
you
it's
say
really
then that another
connected.
way of rewording what you
Yeah.
said in terms of like not being a generalist and being specific is to just pick a few areas that you really do like and
Yeah, a
focus
hundred
on
percent.
those? Yeah.
Yeah. And if it's just that, like, that's a decision I think is really compelling to me. Like, because for me, when people start talking about the security litigation, I find it very interesting, but I realize that there's so much additional information for me to learn about the workings of triage and the artificial intelligence stuff. But for me to catch up just to get to that baseline thing, like, it would be an investment of so many additional hours. And there are so many of my colleagues who are far ahead of me, like Zainab and Will and all of those. Like, I have no attachment to being like, well, I must do this case. I'm like, send it to the people that are further ahead than me on this. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they'll send me the one that's like, okay, well, you've got this type of case, that this is a Deanna case, and I feel like I don't feel any sense of competitiveness right now. I feel like everyone is developing their own areas in their own kind of niche. And I think that we just want the best person on each job. And that's, I
Hmm.
think, what we're developing.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense.
Yeah. My second one is kind of connected, and that's why I'm going to steal your thunder and do my second one right away, which is I need to really like my clients. Like, I need to be like, I want to feel like this is something that I need to win. It's just, for me, it's just part of the value proposition. And I think that it also helps because I'm doing mostly litigation. It helps with my credibility with the board, with the court, with my colleagues at the Department of Justice, with CBSA. When a case is going to have my name on it, it's going to be like I'm advocating with all my strength because I truly believe that my client is deserving of this right, privilege, relief, whatever the case may be. I can fully back it. And also that I have that short of hand. Like, it's kind of like there's some chemistry that goes into a client relationship. You have to be able to
Hmm.
connect with that person. You're not wasting time like haggling over stuff. You don't feel like there's a harassment by them of you or you of them. It's easy. And it's a relationship that's meaningful. And so I don't, I curate my practice in that way. And that's really important to me.
No, that's a good one. So what do we
Yeah.
have so far? We had prepare for what I would call, I guess, a world that's a bit more strict if you've been doing port of entry applications. Also a world where they've announced that they're introducing the ability to cancel permits and documents and applications at any moment. Like it's just going to be a more,
Free for all.
it's going to be a tougher time to practice. Like it harkens a bit back actually to 20, like you can kind of see who was practicing during the Kenny era and
Yeah.
who started after because all these people are, a lot of new consultants or lawyers are saying like, oh my God, the LMIA is like still in process and the work permit's expiring and they process the work permit extension. How could they do that? This is crazy. Has anyone seen this before? And everyone who practiced during the Kenny era is like,
Oh
yep.
yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's
Yeah.
kind of back to that era. But so that was number one. Number two was focusing on what you like and specifying your practice to a degree, liking your clients. My fourth then will be utilizing productivity tools like artificial intelligence. Our firm, an increasing number of people are paying for Copilot because it's all stored within the local ecosystem and you don't have client info going to the cloud, or you can use ChatGPT, Perplexity, any of those. It really does help make practice more efficient and frees up time either to do in more in-depth research, take on more files, just manage your time better.
Yeah,
And I think that it's been interesting speaking with some people who are very reluctant to even experiment or try it, you,
that's me. Yeah.
and it really is the tools are incredible.
I'm not saying that I'm reluctant to try it. I love the idea of it, but I think that the part that I like about the job a lot of the time is just sitting down and writing. I came to this area of practice because I like writing. It's sort of like I feel like once I've done my research, sitting down and crafting the arguments and that's the part that I enjoy. I feel like I'm back essay writing, but there's a real human story behind it,
Hmm.
and I'm reluctant to give that up. And I think I'm good at it. And so, affidavit writing, I'm writing about people's stories and their lives. That's really an important part of the practice for me. And it's like it's literary. It's not just um that it's like a weird enjoyment. It's like the storytelling component of it is important. So I'm
Yeah.
reluctant to admit that something can do it better than me.
I mean, for me, the big time saver like that I have increasingly started using is dictating emails through Copilot into Outlook.
Yes. I don't take
Um,
notes during meetings anymore. I record them and then it creates a transcript. I love that stuff.
yeah,
That is vital. And then I take that transcript and I turn that into the affidavit. No more typing. That's great.
yep,
But yeah, not in terms of researching, not in terms of writing.
yeah. So that's
Yeah.
my fourth. I think that's my last one.
Yeah. I have one which is it's kind of like a combo one, which is that like I used to be like kind of like lone wolf mentality in terms of like how I run my life and my practice. And this period in particular, and I think also just doing the podcast has kind of drawn me out of my shell a fair bit, which is like building like a group of colleagues that I think because we're lawyers, we have this very like proprietary kind of attitude towards like our systems and our, materials and our precedents and all that kind of stuff. But I think that one of the very unique factors about immigration law is that it is a very collegial area of practice. And I think we've really broken down the third wall, I think, over the course of the last year. Like, I know Steve and I communicate like 5, 6 times a day. Sometimes it's just to like bring some levity, as we often
Yeah,
say in our chat
we
with
have
Lev
some signal
Abramovich.
groups with past Borderlines podcast guests.
Exactly. And it's
There's a
sort of
bunch of
they
us
keep
going for lunch in
growing.
a bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's really growing. And I think, it's a lot of the time like, oh my God, did I screw this up? And everyone's like, no, God, no, this is happening all the time now. And, so that collegial support is absolutely vital to have the sounding boards because oftentimes we are sole practitioners or we might be practitioners within a larger practice, but the only one within that practice doing this
Yeah, yeah,
specific type of work. So having a diversified posse that can be like, yes, I do it, or I do it like this, and somebody who thinks differently from you, who can bring another perspective, who can share some materials. It is absolutely vital. And so, like, my people on shorthand, I said Lev already, Kamaljit
yeah.
Lehal, Laura Best, like all the kind of like old reliables who like at a second will just drop everything and return a phone call, spend 5 minutes and be like, okay, we chat it through. And obviously you on the podcast and off, just like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. It's actually been a big it's a lot of the fun in the podcast and definitely like if you're leaving, people always say leave a review on iTunes, but if there's an episode you want to hear or a topic you want, or even just a comment, send us an email. It was neat this year having the Conference Board of Canada reach out, the University of Winnipeg send the book about Ugandan refugee resettlement.
yeah, I
Even
listened
after
to that
the
one last night. That was
yeah,
super, super interesting
it
episode. And Mira being on that episode. I loved like having the personal as well as the like professional perspective on like how these stories have impact.
yeah, it oh Mira's super into the topic.
Of course.
I think she may even like plan a trip to mimic what Shazan did. Even just having
Yeah.
like, yeah, like meeting Shazan. Even after the Justice Mosley episode where he talked a little bit about how there was an issue with whether DOJ could get appointed to the bench because of some pension issue. and then having a pensions lawyer who works in government email saying, "Hey, I listened to the podcast and here's how that actually works."
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
very neat to see just who listens and when.
yeah. Well, that's
Definitely
very
look
much what we've
forward to
been
the
trying to
podcast.
do.
And I think it's a good
Yeah,
like, part of the whole fun of the podcast is just like you said, you get to go out, get out of your shell, meet different people. It's been super interesting.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And with that, I guess we say happy holidays to
Yeah,
everybody.
happy holidays. But
Yeah.
yeah, we will be on next week with, or not next week, 2 weeks with tomorrow for the year-end wrap up. And in
Hmm.
2025, it looks like we may have Chantel on if there's an election again. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Chantal Deloche, is that who you mean?
Chantel Deloge has been on for 3 elections. She's like our political analyst.
Right. Yeah, that's well suited. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, I guess I mean when people listen to this, they'll listen whenever, but yeah, there's a little lunch group about to form. So see you in a bit.
Yeah, see you in a bit.
Bye.
Ciao.